In this tutorial series, we're going to get you started with AI coding assistants. Now, the goal is not just to get your development environment set up or just build an app using AI, but to help you understand what coding assistants can do for you and teach you how to best use them. We're going to go much further than just having AI generate code for us. All experienced developers know that writing code is a fraction of the work required in software engineering. You'll also understand how to integrate AI to help automate nearly every software engineering activity, from evaluating technologies to use for your app, to generating documentation and diagrams, to debugging issues and more. And I want to stress this point. Along the way, you'll see how you can leverage AI to teach you as you build. Now, I can't think of a more exciting way to learn software engineering than by learning as you create cool stuff. Now, although this series is focused on coding assistants, chatbots such as ChatGPT also play an important role in the development workflow. So we'll spend a little time understanding when and how to use these tools as well. This series is for you if you're a beginner and you want to use AI to help you learn faster and build some cool apps well before you could using only conventional learning methods. Or you might be a seasoned software engineer and you're interested in getting started with integrating AI into your workflow to let you build faster and automate a bunch of the tedious, boring parts of your work. Or maybe you're a software engineer who's already using AI in your work and you just want to get some fresh ideas on improving your workflow. By the end of this series, you'll know how to design a simple AI-augmented development workflow that works for you, how to select and set up your AI tools, and most importantly, how to use these tools in your new workflow. Now, I plan to release a tutorial for this series each week, and each installment will build on the previous one. So let's get started. In this first installment, we're going to answer these questions. What is an AI coding assistant? What can coding assistants do for us? What are the main types of AI coding assistants? What's the role of chatbots versus coding assistants? And how can I install and configure an AI coding assistant? Before getting into the weeds with how to get started with an AI coding assistant, I want to make sure we're on the same page with just what an AI coding assistant is and what it is not. Now, you've likely heard of many coding assistants. For example, there's Cursor, GitHub Copilot, Codium, Cody AI, Continue, Tab9, Aider, and on. I can't even list them all here. One way to think about an AI coding assistant is this. It's a specialized tool integrated directly into your development environment, providing real-time, context-aware coding support. Note that definition excludes all chatbots, such as ChatGPT. But what can AI coding assistants do for us? Well, the short answer, almost anything you can think of required for software engineering, with the possible exception of app deployment. But even then, I can think of ways I could get my assistant to do that as well. Here's a small sampling of the tasks you can easily offload to an assistant. Generating the directory and file structure for a new project, generating and updating code, generating unit tests, documenting your code, generating documentation for the overall project, for example, your README file, fixing bugs, refactoring code to make it more maintainable, explaining the code to you, managing project dependencies such as third-party libraries, analyzing code for issues such as security vulnerabilities, helping you learn software engineering or a new programming language or a framework. Now there's more. Those are just the capabilities I tend to use frequently. Now I want to take a minute to let you know that we've just launched a new Skool community, also by the name Coding the Future with AI. You can expect much deeper discussions on the topics we're discussing here, plus a lot more topics, all related to using AI for software development. You'll be able to ask for help others, join group calls to get help, and share your experience. We'll also offer other learning material there that goes beyond what we can offer here on our YouTube channel. Right now, you can join this community for free. And once you join, your membership will remain free forever. However, we will be moving to a paid subscription by no later than the end of this year, 2024. Again, if you join before we transition to paid membership, you'll be grandfathered in and keep your free membership. Now, I put the link to the new community in this video's description. If you're getting value from our YouTube content, you're definitely going to get even more value from our community. There are also at least two main types or categories of AI coding assistants. One, those that execute as an IDE or within an IDE, typically as a VS Code or JetBrains IDE extension. And two, those that run inside a standard terminal outside of an IDE. Examples of IDE-based assistants are Cursor, Continue, and Cody AI. An example of a terminal-based assistant is Aider. Now, I did some research, and frankly, I wasn't able to find what I consider to be a viable competitor to Aider's approach. I'm just going to do a really quick demo here just to give you some idea as to the kind of experience you can expect from each type of assistant. Now, I'll barely scratch the surface here. We'll get into much more detail in future tutorials. Okay, I have the Aider Coding Assistant open inside an empty project folder. I give Aider a short prompt that asks Aider to create a brand new app for managing customers. Now we'll see that Aider will use this to create a plan, then explain its plan to us as it goes, and finally, it will implement the code for our app. Now it's going to show us and tell us about every file and every line of code it plans to create before it actually starts creating the directories and the files that contain that code. Then at the end, it's going to explain some of the things that we might need to know. For example, what is the next step that it recommends that we do? Because we ask it not to generate all of the code, just to generate the skeleton code for us for now. Now ask for permission to create each of the files that contain the source code that is generated. And you can see when I expand the Explorer view, it's created all of our directory structures, all of our files, everything. However, as we requested, it only put to-dos inside the methods. There's no real implementations yet. That's because we prompted it that way. Now let's ask Aider to go ahead and generate all the code required to implement the functionality for creating new customer records. And again, Aider first explains its plan, which requires code updates to multiple files. Now for folks who've checked out the Cursor Coding Assistant's recently released Composer feature, well, Aider's been making simultaneous multi-file code updates for a long time now. Again, Aider shows us all the planned updates and then provides some really helpful information. Now I could ask Aider more questions here about the app or technologies being used. Just one example of how coding assistants can help us learn as we build. Let's check out a few of the code updates Aider just made. It implemented methods in all the Java classes that are required to create a new customer. Aider also knows how to run our app and even offers to run it for us. Note that it's figuring all this out completely on its own. So let's take it up on its offer. We'll see that Aider will run the command to start our app, and we can see our REST API is running and accessible on port 8080. How about generating tests for our app? Here's how that works with Aider. We can have Aider generate unit tests for an entire Java class or just a couple of methods. Here, we'll ask Aider to create unit tests for one of our implemented Java methods. Just like before, Aider creates a plan, then shows us the plan unit test code, and very helpfully explains how that test works in detail. More learning opportunities. And again, Aider knows just how to run our unit tests, and it offers to run them for us. So let's do it. Tests ran and tests passed. Remember that I'm showing you this only to give you an idea of the kind of experience you can expect from working with these tools. This is not meant to be a coding tutorial. We'll get to those later. So that's what it's like to work in a terminal-based coding assistant like Aider. Now let's compare that experience to working with an assistant that's integrated directly into your IDE. We'll be using Cody for this. I have the Cody VS Code extension enabled. You may be able to make out the small icons in the lower and upper right corners of my IDE. Those winky faces indicate I'm using Cody. Cody creates the Java docs for that method. And next, we'll use a very common feature of IDE integrated coding assistants known as autocomplete to generate the implementation of that same method. And we'll move on to another source file and repeat these same steps for another method. Now, if we see anything in the docs or in the code generated by Cody, we could ask Cody to make changes to it or enhancements. What I'm showing you is really simple, but Cody can handle a lot more complex tasks than these. But hopefully you get the gist of how these features operate, which is all I'm trying to show you at this point. Almost all IDE integrated coding assistants provide a chat window. Let's check out Cody's chat. I'll start a new chat. Note Cody automatically added the source file I was focused on in the editor. I'll have Cody explain the customer controller.java file. Now it tells me everything I need to know about this file and probably more. We already had Aider generate unit tests for one of our methods. Let's see how that works with Cody. I'll use Cody's generate unit test command that's baked into its chat window to create unit tests for the customer controller class. You can see Cody creating a new source file and generating test code into it. Okay, that's coding assistants. But how exactly are coding assistants different from chatbots? Well, put simply, AI chatbots such as ChatGPT and Claude AI Meta.ai, they're generalists that are pretty good at coding tasks, while coding assistants are specialists that are far better at coding tasks. Sure, most chatbots are pretty good at answering questions related to code and even generating code, but coding is not their only or even their primary reason for existing. They have to satisfy a really wide variety of use cases for lots of different users. They live outside of your development environment as well, and this is very important. On the other hand, AI coding assistants are highly tuned specifically for working with code, and not just generating code as a lot of people think, but understanding code and dealing with a lot of tedious software development tasks on behalf of the developer. And that makes the developer's workflow far more productive. And in case you're wondering, many AI coding assistants now also let you add reference files to their context, just like ChatGPT. For example, you might want to let the assistant see a document that contains some requirements for your app, or you want to see your coding conventions. They can also read in a web page and use it for context. Many also offer multimodal features like many chatbots do, meaning they can not only analyze text but also images such as design diagrams. You might think of coding assistants as being similar to ChatGPT or Claude.ai, but on some major steroids when it comes to software development and related tasks. But when should we use coding assistants, and when do we use chatbots? To be clear, both chatbots and coding assistants have their places in software engineering, at least for now. When it comes to using AI for software engineering, we have a lot of options, and I get many questions on which tool or which approach is best for this or that. For software development, I'm going to break the work we do into two broad categories. One, working directly with code, and two, all other software development related tasks. Now, I'm referring here to tasks like fleshing out requirements and plans, architecture, design, creating user stories, evaluating and comparing technology stacks for our apps, etc. AI can most definitely be used effectively for every one of these software engineering tasks. I do it all the time. But here's how I'm personally deciding when to use a chatbot and when to use a coding assistant these days, and what I recommend when asked. Now, I always use AI coding assistants when working directly with code, and I shift to either ChatGPT or Claude.ai for big tasks that do not require the AI to see or update any of my code. What do I mean by that? As an example, if I'm starting a new project and I need to brainstorm requirements, technologies to use, architecture, system design, generating user stories, I use Claude.ai or ChatGPT. I also use them when I'm researching a new technology. The chatbots are just more convenient and cost-effective than the coding assistant for this stuff. But the moment I move to tasks that deal with code, I'm in my IDE or terminal and working with my coding assistants. I often feed artifacts generated by a chatbot into my coding assistants for needed context, such as a document that describes my chosen tech stack or user stories or my coding conventions. Now, for a better idea of exactly what I mean, check out this video. In that video, I do all my upfront work, project high-level design, project plan, user story generation, etc. in ChatGPT. And once I have my first set of user stories, I flip to my IDE and coding assistants for the rest of the video. So I do exactly one context switch from chatbot to coding assistant. The idea is to use the best tool for a task and to design your workflow to minimize how frequently you have to jump back and forth between tools. Now, that's based on my own personal experience and what I found works best for me after trying many variations. And I know lots of folks are still using chatbots for code generation, and it's working for them. And it may work better for some people, including you. And it's what I was doing until a few months ago. There's no one best approach for all people. I'm just offering another option to consider that might give you another boost in productivity beyond using chatbots for coding. Here's a bit of my rationale for why I find sticking to coding assistants for working with code to be a better approach for me and possibly for you. First, when it comes to coding, copy and paste ain't your buddy, it ain't your pal. It's very error prone. You have to manually create files and directories, make sure you paste exactly the right code in exactly the right files and don't miss anything. Then there's the toggle tax. Every single time we switch focus from one app to another, there is a real cost. This article from the Harvard Business Review specifically discusses how our productivity is impacted by switching between apps. Also, many applications have complex, deeply nested directory structures. Here's an example of a typical directory structure for Java apps. And no, such complexity is not limited to Java. When a chatbot generates code for you, you got to create all those directories yourself. And no typos, or the app may not compile, or worse, you might get really cryptic runtime errors. Also, You'll find yourself making your own code edits sometimes. As I've warned repeatedly in previous tutorials, you should not rely on AI to generate every bit of your code. There are a lot of really important reasons for this. And when you do make your own updates, you'll have to manually feed those updates back into the chat. Why? Well, because the chatbot can't offer suggestions or generate correct code without seeing what it generated plus what we puny humans created. An AI coding assistant can see all code in your repo, whether it created it or you created it. I believe one of your main objectives as an engineer should be to eliminate as many possible sources of human error as possible. And another should be to minimize context switching. Start wherever you're comfortable, but I recommend you then use these principles to guide you as you evolve your workflow. So you're aware, Aider, for example, can do every single thing related to coding any chatbot can do, plus a ton more useful stuff that no chatbot can do for a developer. And that's true for almost any AI coding assistant. But there are so many coding assistants, how do I choose? We'll get into this in a future video. For most of this series, I'll be using two coding assistants, Aider and Cody AI. You'll be able to apply almost all of what you learned to any other coding assistant that works best for you once we're done, or maybe even as we go. I know, enough talking, you just want to get started. And you probably thought I was going to walk you through installation of some AI coding assistant. Nah. In some previous tutorials, I did provide instructions for setting up your development environment. I'm not going to do that here. Instead, let's use this as our first hands-on learning opportunity. You don't need me to tell you how to install any tool on your machine, whether you're on Mac, Linux, or Windows, even if you're totally new to all this. Not when you have AI tools that are far better at this than I am. If I provide the instructions, you only learn to mimic what I do. And you're in trouble the moment one thing goes awry. No. Instead, start learning to leverage your AI for these things. For example, here's a simple prompt I put together to get step-by-step instructions for installing the Aider AI coding assistant on my Mac. Notice that I approached this from the perspective of a pure newbie. The only technical details I gave ChatGPT were the OS I'm using and the AI model I want to use with Aider. Now I'll provide all the prompts in the video description below. Notice how ChatGPT didn't make any assumptions about things like tools we already had installed. It gave us installation steps for everything we could possibly need. Now, if I didn't even know which AI model I should use with Aider, I could have also first asked for recommendations. And if you run into issues while following the instructions, provide what you did and the error information back into the same chat session to get help from ChatGPT to resolve the errors. And what about installing other AI coding assistants, such as Cody, which runs as an IDE extension? Well, here's a simple prompt I used to get instructions for installing and verifying Cody. I'm a huge believer in teaching people principles and practices they can use more broadly. Sure, it's nice to have someone do a demo or tell you, push this button or copy and paste this prompt, but where does that really get you in the long run? Dependent on them, that's where. There's a place for that, but teaching fundamentals is far more valuable in my opinion. In the next installment in this series, I'll be using the Aider and Cody AI coding assistants, as well as the chatbots such as ChatGPT or Claude.ai. Our goal is not just to teach any particular coding assistant, but to teach you what you need to know about using AI for software development so you can apply your knowledge to any development setup you choose. But I have to pick a couple of assistants, and these are the ones I'm most familiar with. Now, after going through this series, you'll be able to choose whatever combination of assistants you like best. But to get the most out of this series, you should install Aider and continue. That will let you actually experiment with what you're learning instead of just watching me do it. Just start with the previous prompts and work through the setup using either ChatGPT or Claude.ai. I would not recommend any other chatbots for this, at least as of this recording. In the next video, we're going to start learning to actually use AI coding assistants for development tasks. I'll give you some really simple pointers for using them effectively, including prompting strategies. Yes, we'll use them to generate code, but you'll see lots of cool ways they can help you with all sorts of tasks related to software development. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope to see you in the next video in this series. That's where the real fun begins. And please don't forget to join our new Skool community while memberships are free. I look forward to actually meeting you in our chat and our group video sessions there soon. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give a like and subscribe. I'm Tim Kitchens, coding the future with you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.